Video games have always strived to appeal to as many senses as they can. I mean, this makes total sense, as it keeps you hooked on whatever you might be playing, and the biggest sense developers will always try to appeal to is sight. Sight, of course, is the sense we rely on the most, so it makes sense on why they try to appeal to this. Take a look at a game like Portal 2. While the gameplay of this game is superb, as is normal for Valve titles, it also has the most beautifully constructed scenery. But what really makes the scenery look so beautiful, and how does it make us so invested in the environment? Well, most importantly, you just have objects you can see. This includes things like rocks, filing cabinets, to potatoes. But that's not to say sight is the only important thing, because you still have things like ambience that construct the feeling of where you are, shown by the creaks of a facility or even your own steps. Similarly to ambience, we also have the music, or the lack thereof, which is pretty self-explanatory. And lastly, you have things that play with the lighting. This includes things like fog, reflections in water, or reflections off of anything really. I'd like to break down every single one of these and demonstrate what makes them so integral to the game's effect it has on the player. So why not start with the first thing I mentioned, the objects you can interact with. This is the first and most obvious part of building a good environment, of course, as without it you really just have nothing. But the point is, Portal 2 does this really well. This is best showcased as when you're at the bottom of the facility, things seem so rundown and broken. And that of course is because they actually are so rundown and broken. I mean, that's where a lot of the puzzles in this game actually come from. But this is important because it enforces that feeling of hopelessness you're shoved into when you get shoved down into the old facilities. But what might be more important is how they give the feeling of progression by restoring that hopelessness as you ascend, which is shown by the place looking more well kept. And once you're full of hope as you've completed your ascent, it's immediately struck down again due to the look of the facility after Wheatley has destroyed it, due to some impulsive decisions. Another game that uses the same object to progression philosophy is Spelunky 2. Now, if you've ever played Spelunky 2, you might be surprised to hear me mention it, but I believe there's some gold to be found here. In Spelunky, your goal is to get as deep as you can into a cave without dying, and this game will beat you down as much as it can to prevent you from doing that. But this game has something really important for this concept of object-like tone setting, that being the layers in which you descend through. Unlike Portal, this is designed to give you a burning curiosity for what lays below, and whenever you set a high score for yourself, you can't help but wonder what you might have seen if you just made it a little deeper, or maybe you can't shake the feeling of what you might have found if you just explored a little more. This of course isn't only due to the very obvious and consistent progression, but the somewhat unpredictability of the game. Since it's randomly generated, you'll really never know what you might see if you give it a little more exploration. I'm sure by these two examples you can already see that this is one huge chunk of the whole here, but of course it's nothing without everything else that surrounds it, and that includes the ambience, which by itself isn't really anything special, but when paired with something it makes for one of the most powerful things to set a mood. A really great example of this is Phasmaphobia. Because this is a horror game, it has to rely on ambiences more than most games would because it literally has no music, and they do a really great job with this. This is showcased by the light rain you can hear, which changes in volume depending on which floor you're on, the creaks of your feet hitting the floor, the whir of a fan, or the buzzing of a light. All of these things naturally put us on edge, and without these things the game wouldn't be nearly as scary as it is. Wait, I see you're not quite convinced on this one. Take a look at another game, Don't Starve Together. This game is generally pretty peaceful, except when it isn't. But aside from that, there's a lot of ambience in this. In Don't Starve Together you have 3 meters, a health, a hunger, and uniquely a sanity meter. As you might have guessed, as your sanity meter goes down, you become more insane. And whilst this is happening, you progressively begin to hear and see things that aren't necessarily real. This goes from a light drone in your ear to constant unwavering whispers in your ear. And whether you notice it or not, this ambience will put you on edge. And rightfully so, because if you become insane enough, those things that you were seeing that you thought weren't actually real come out and attack you. Anyways, this is an extremely great example of ambience building a great environment, especially with how it just doesn't throw it all at you at once. Gradual buildup is extremely valuable to effectively make you feel a targeted emotion, and I'm sure now you can see how special that ambience may be to an environment. But we need to get to the predominant effect to make a great environment, that being the music. When I think of games that build good environments with music that complements them, I typically think of two games, Undertale and Celeste. Both of these games beautifully master the art of getting music to match a specific mood, so let's start with an example from Celeste. This game, as you may know, is about a girl's anxiety and her overcoming it, that being represented by the mountain she's trying to climb. But eventually they come to a place where they have a panic attack, and I think it's best to let the music here speak for itself. This is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of making an environment work the best it possibly can. You can hear the music dissipate, the calm melody coming back in, and the screen showing nothing but the feather. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the point is, this scene is perfectly constructed for the message it's trying to deliver. Let's take a look at a different game, Undertale, and more specifically, the genocide route, and more specifically, the fight with Undyne on genocide. The fight with Undyne, like most fights on genocide, is a one-hit kill, but this one specifically has a lot of power behind it. That of course is mostly driven by the music, which is what you're listening to right now. What makes this so impactful for myself is the fact you can hear the wind in the background. While it may be argued that that's ambience, I would disagree, as it's part of the track and not its own separate entity. But anyways, another reason this track is so powerful is because Undyne's speech she gives. I couldn't be bothered to show you the whole thing, but just imagine it's one of the most appropriate speeches to go with this song. But if you take away the song, it becomes kind of tone deaf. Sure, the message is still there, but without the music to back it up, it's really not nearly as impactful. With all of this in mind, I'm sure you can see how this is a really powerful scene. And the way Undertale itself utilizes music really solidifies it as something that uses its music to the best of its ability for the time.
Fingers in his ass.
But for time, we need to get to the next category, the lighting. After all of this talk of objects, ambience, and music, we have to think back, because these really good scenes where lighting is at its best are usually only made once because the time it takes to fine-tune them to perfection takes quite a bit. So let's take this time to think back to every single game we've mentioned at one point or another, and of course, let's start with Portal 2. As I've already mentioned before, I believe this to be the most well-made game in this list, and this last scene shows it. This is specifically because you're being freed from the facility for the first time in who knows how long, and this is the moment where you're seeing freedom for the first time since the events of Portal 1. And the game really catches this thunder in a bottle. The visual adaptation of your eyes seeing the sunlight, the light lighting up the entire wheat field, and the freedom— Wait, don't click off yet! Here I'll just keep everything brief, because to be honest, I could go on all day about all these minor details and how they mean something metaphorically, rhetorically, poetically, or theoretically, or any other fancy way, but that would just be genuinely pretty boring to sit through. So, lightning round. Spelunky 2 has another pretty simple ending screen, for the true ending anyways, simply just showing a constellation of everything you've done, with the more profound goals being bigger and brighter. Next up is Phasmaphobia. Yeah, no. Don't starve together. Due to this game being an infinite survival, it's hard to pinpoint an exact place where the lighting is effective at setting a mood. However, the 4 seasons in the game are comprised of different filters on the screen that reflect the environment you're in. Celeste's panic attack scene has a lot going for it, but the most effective part I find about this is the end, where the screen fades to black, showing nothing but the feather, showing that narrative of her coming to her senses and focusing on just her breath. Wait. I'll get back to it. And lastly, Undertale has the true pacifist ending screen, where similar to Portal, the characters are seeing the light of day for the first time, and again, who knows how long. Alright. Okay. Did I get them all? That's okay. It's worth the viewer retention and all the billions of dollars I'll make from this video. Thank you all for watching. I know this differs from my regular content a bit, but I think it's really the way I should go. Especially after seeing this video get billions of views and garner me trillions of dollars, I think it'll really put me in a good spot to keep doing stuff like this. And by the way, if you haven't thought of it yet, subscribe, or I'll come to your house and do it for you. With love. With that being said, I love you all, and thank you so much for watching.